Everybody thought this NBA trade deadline was going to be boring, and they were wrong. Kyrie Irving has just requested a trade from the Brooklyn Nets 6 days before the NBA trade deadline. Now, the why of all of this, why would Kyrie request a trade, is very interesting, because we've been getting reports and rumors recently about the fact that he wants to stay in Brooklyn, and there was some traction behind him staying in Brooklyn. He's a free agent this offseason. Positive reports coming out of that situation. Obviously, based off the fact that he requested a trade today, things didn't go the way Kyrie wanted in terms of a contract extension with Brooklyn. It's why he's essentially requested a trade last offseason as well before opting in. He has all the leverage in this situation. Brooklyn, in my opinion, has no choice but to trade Kyrie. If he wants to leave in the offseason and they feel like they can get some kind of value right now, they have to move him. And that's just what happens in Brooklyn every single year. Something crazy like this happened. Of course, my first thought here was the LA Lakers. Kyrie going back to play with LeBron. We know what the trade package would be. It would be Russ and a first, or Russ and 2 firsts, whatever the case may be, whatever Brooklyn can try and get out of the Lakers. That's a rumor that we heard all offseason. The problem for Brooklyn is things have changed. One, the Lakers might not want to trade away Russell Westbrook in exchange for Kyrie Irving. And even worse for Brooklyn, they might not want to attach any kind of draft compensation to Russell Westbrook to trade for Kyrie Irving, because they know the desperate situation that the Nets are in. They know that Kyrie, even as talented as he is not a guy that a lot of teams around the league are going to be looking to trade for, especially when he's an unrestricted free agent this upcoming offseason. So whereas in the offseason they could have gotten one or both of those future first-round picks, they might not be able to get anything like that kind of value right now in exchange for Kyrie Irving. But if they were to get that kind of value, if they were to get a first or 2 first-round picks out of the Lakers, in addition to Russell Westbrook, by the way, I'm not sure that the Lakers would trade Russ. That's a whole nother conversation. It would require other teams to be interested in trading for Kyrie. And those other teams, in my opinion, also include the Dallas Mavericks. This is a team that needs a perimeter playmaker. They need another shot maker alongside Luka. They desperately need someone like this. And they have not a great amount of assets, but maybe something that Brooklyn could be interested in. They could do, Spencer Dinwiddie, Tim Hardaway Jr., and maybe a first-round pick or something like that. Like, this has been the issue for Dallas this whole time, is that they don't really have the assets to make a true superstar level trade, and they need someone exactly like Kyrie. And if they come to Brooklyn and say, hey, this is what we can offer, we can do, Hardaway Jr., Dinwiddie, and a first in exchange for Kyrie, then all of a sudden the Lakers might step up and say, hey, we can give you each of these 2 first-round picks that are all the way into the future. And then another team to keep an eye on here certainly would be the Miami Heat. They always seem to be involved in these kinds of things. They could easily make some salaries come together, trade a first-round pick. It's not difficult for them to put together something here. But realistically, those are kind of the teams here. We don't really have any other information in terms of where Kyrie wants to go or what exactly his mindset is here. And like I said in the beginning, the market for him is going to be pretty limited as an unrestricted free agent. It's an awful situation for Brooklyn to be in, and I'd imagine that Kyrie knows that, and that's why he did end up requesting the trade. Best case scenario for Brooklyn, what ends up happening is 2 or 3 of the teams that I mentioned in the beginning of this video, Miami, Dallas, the Lakers, some other team out there, steps up and says, you know what, we will actually make this deal. We will give you a first-round pick or 2 first-round picks and get into some kind of bidding war over the next 6 days. Because if that doesn't happen, if they canvass the league and Dallas is like, nah, we're good, we don't want to give up multiple players just to match Kyrie's salary, and the Lakers are like, nah, we're good, we'd rather just keep Russ and our 2 first-round picks, things have changed since the offseason. If that happens, they're in a situation where either they're getting nothing for Kyrie at the trade deadline and he's just going to be an unhappy, unrestricted free agent. Ask Boston fans how that worked out for them when he ended up leaving Boston in the postseason. Or they're going to be trading away Kyrie for 2nd round picks. I'm not kidding. That's the level of value we're looking at here, because this is such a bizarre and a weird situation. And by the way, this is incredibly compelling as well as it relates to the Kevin Durant situation. This is a guy that requested a trade in the offseason himself, and Kyrie has said multiple times he wants to play with KD. He wants to continue to be with his guy. One of the reasons people thought that he would never, actually leave or request a trade from Brooklyn was because KD was there. I don't know what changed in his mind. I'm not going to try and pretend like I understand the thought process of Kyrie Irving, but if he does get traded, or if he's, committed to not being on the team next year, I don't know what that does to the Kevin Durant situation. It could completely implode once again for Brooklyn. The exact same thing that happened last year. Someone falls on Kevin Durant's knee, he gets hurt, the team plays poorly without him. Then one of the stars, last year it was Harden, this year it's Kyrie, requests a trade, and now all of a sudden KD's unhappy and the team is bad when he's not playing. I thought this season was going differently. Obviously, that is not the case. I would be very, very surprised if the Nets looked to move KD before this deadline. A trade of that magnitude in a 6-day time frame, when I'm sure Brooklyn, up until a few days ago at the absolute earliest, was not anticipating this kind of a trade request, would be unprecedented to get that kind of Kevin Durant mega deal put together in the middle of the season. So to me, this situation breaks down to this. One, Kyrie just isn't happy in Brooklyn. The extension, conversations have not gone well. It doesn't feel like they're going to commit to a long-term deal to re-sign in this offseason, and he would rather just go and play somewhere else to end out this year and then become a free agent at the end of the season. That's option number one. That is a separate, it's not connected at all to Kevin Durant in any way, and it doesn't impact Kevin Durant in any way. That's option number one. Option number two is that him and KD have had conversations about what the future looks like in Brooklyn, and they realize that maybe it makes sense for them to split up, go their separate ways, and use their leverage against each other, in which case Kyrie requesting this trade could, although it's unlikely, necessitate a Kevin Durant trade before the deadline or eventually going into this offseason. Option number three is that any number of other possibilities could happen because this is the Brooklyn Nets. And again, I really want to stress where Kyrie's value is at this point, because it's easy to look at him as, hey, all-star starter Kyrie Irving, incredible amount of value, right? No, this is the way you have to think about it. You're trading for the most mercurial NBA player possibly in the history of the league, the guy that is incredibly indecisive, makes all these weird decisions at any time, was engulfed in controversy at the beginning of the season to the point where he was suspended by the team and by the league. He's an unrestricted free agent this upcoming offseason, and yes, he's one of the most talented offensive players in the league, but you could easily trade anything of value for basically 20 to 25 games of Kyrie Irving. And if you go off any kind of precedent for him in terms of that recent season in Boston as an unrestricted free agent, if anything goes wrong, if he's a little bit unhappy, if you're a team like Boston that trades for Kyrie when you weren't one of the destinations that he had in mind, he has no issue basically quitting on your team going into the postseason. And those factors all together make for a situation where I don't think the market is going to be very good at all for Kyrie Irving, which is bad for Brooklyn. It doesn't really matter to Kyrie if he ends up on a team that he wants to play on and then, plays well and gets a big contract. But the biggest loser in all of this is Brooklyn. They have no leverage. They have 6 days to put a trade together for a guy whose market is really not going to be there in the first place. And if they don't put a trade together, they're losing Kyrie for nothing. You don't come out and do something like this and then change your mind in the offseason and then just re-sign a contract with the team. They have 6 days to get any kind of value out of Kyrie, and if they don't, they lose him for nothing. If I had to guess, and I'm biased here, those of you who don't know I'm a Nets fan, if I had to guess, this has everything to do with extension conversations between Kyrie and Brooklyn. I would imagine that Kyrie was hoping to get an extension for Brooklyn. He wants to stay with the Nets and would have rather just re-signed a deal before the trade deadline and used the trade deadline as his leverage to get a new contract. And my guess would be it doesn't have anything to do with Kevin Durant. It might have an impact on Kevin Durant, his desire to stay with Brooklyn, but it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with him and KD making decisions together. Kyrie's been pushing for a long-term contract extension from Brooklyn going back to last offseason and the craziness that was the season, and the team has for a year and a half now refused to commit to him long-term on a max deal, and that is probably what eventually pushed him over the edge here, and ultimately is probably going to end up being a huge mistake for Brooklyn in terms of their championship aspirations this year, as well as whatever kind of value they could ever hope to get out of Kyrie Irving. If it were me and I was Brooklyn, I would try and get any kind of value out of the guy I could. If I could try and put some of these teams together and get one of those future firsts from the Lakers and Russ, at this point, that's kind of where they're at. I know KD and Russ together would be an insane combination, but that is seriously where we're at. I would try and get any kind of value out of him. And if I'm these other teams around the league, I would not trade for Kyrie unless, maybe if I'm Dallas and I give up a future protected first and some rotation players that aren't really a big deal. I think they're probably the most motivated team. Unless I'm them, I would rather just wait until free agency and try to get the guy on, whatever contract I can get him on. Trading for him for 20 to 25 games when at any moment he could just change his mind on wanting to be with the team, as he literally just did, that's not a very good option in my opinion. This has completely opened up and changed the trade deadline in a number of different ways. I don't know how the league is going to react over the next 6 days. It is going to be an incredibly interesting week in the NBA, as it always is, but this is not what I had anticipated when I woke up this morning.